All right, everyone, welcome back again for yet another podcast. This time it's me, my colleague Björn Krantz, and Robin Harrison from IGB. We're having a bit of a discussion around the wider perspective of the industry, where it's going. Listen in.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode in the What's Up Yggdrasil series of podcasts from Yggdrasil. My name is Stuart Darkin. I'm Director of New Media at Square in the Air. Good to see you again. I'm joined once again by Fredrik Elmqvist, the CEO and founder of Yggdrasil, and also Björn Krantz, who is Chief of Global Marketing Operations at Yggdrasil. Hi again, gents. We also have an external contributor today, and that's Robin Harrison, who's an industry journalist who many of you will know. Gentlemen, if I could ask you each just do a short introduction and tell people who you are. Maybe we'll go to Fred and Bjorn first and then finish with our guest Robin, if that's okay.
All right, super. Yes, hi, I'm Fred. I'm the CEO and founder of Yggdrasil Gaming. I came into online gaming in 2006, sports betting first, then into online casino. And I've been there since. And as I said, yes, I am the founder of Yggdrasil.
Hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Björn Krantz. I'm running global market operations here at Yggdrasil. So we are responsible for driving sustainable long-term revenue growth through a well-defined customer and market operations strategy. Our unit have a 360 view on the revenue ecosystem and how we can impact that revenue ecosystem in a positive and sustainable way.
And I am Robin Harrison, as Stuart said, and I'm the B2B editor at Clarion Gaming. So I look after titles such as IGB and IGB North America. Been in the sector for over a decade now, working for a number of publications, and delighted to be here today.
Thanks all. Now, this is a rather broad topic, looking at industry dynamics. And Fred, you'll be pleased to know I'm coming to you first.
Wow.
It's been quite a year for online casino and, of course, beyond. As we look ahead, as the world emerges from the shadow of the pandemic, I wonder what you think the key challenges are as we move forward.
I mean, it's a super broad topics, and there's so much dynamics in play. If you're looking from a global perspective, I mean, we are a casino developer from beginning. We're taking a more of a publishing role, working more with enabling technology, enabling current external studios and so forth, bringing relevance to our market. But taking a few steps back and looking from a global perspective, of course, we see some turbulences in Asia at the moment. We see some regulatory impacts in Europe that can swing in basically either way. We see. We're all for the regulations, but these player restrictions, too heavy of those, can have a negative impact on the actual legitimate market, and it can create some really, really darker things coming from it. We're talking about counterfeit B2C, counterfeit B2B, even counterfeit streams or hijacked streams. So I see that as a very not so pleasant risk, and he's looking at the close European market. And on the other side, we have a Klondike, with SPACs and US and sports betting. I'm sure Robin here can tell us more about that if we get into that topic. So I see, a completely super dynamic landscape at the moment.
It's interesting how you identified the threat of over-regulation as creating more problems than it does solutions. Robin, from a media perspective, you'll have a slightly different take on things and on the challenges facing the sector. How do you see it?
Well, I'd agree with Fred in that you're seeing a lot of changes in Europe. I mean, it's very much, it feels like there's a kind of old world, new world divide opening up, whereas Europe was once very, I suppose, welcoming to iGaming. You're seeing a real kind of shift in how regulators approach it, not just in new markets as they open, like Germany, which is finally opening, or even the Netherlands. But you're seeing this in, the UK, you're seeing this in Spain, Italy. To an extent, it's even coming into France. And of course, Sweden is a very good example of a particularly kind of a fluid regulatory situation that's had a real kind of knock-on effect in the industry. But then if you go across the pond, in the US, where, for example, in 2015, I think people would have, maybe a few years before that, maybe say 2013 when New Jersey opened for online casino, very few people would have, believed that there could have been the kind of wave of regulation that we've seen for sports betting. It's live in more than 20 states now. That would have been unthinkable kind of like 6-7 years ago. And then you're also seeing a lot more kind of industry legitimacy in that side of the pond. It's like you're seeing, as Fred mentioned, you're seeing a lot of listings either through, the kind of traditional IPO route or through the special purpose acquisition companies. And then, sports betting and to a lesser extent gaming is kind of cutting through to the kind of, the traditional media. A lot of these companies are kind of either, taking the advertising dollars or, like Fox Sports trying to get involved in a more meaningful thing that you're also seeing Sinclair broadcasting with Bally's, or even, Fubo TV, which isn't that well known over here, but it's essentially a streaming service that's moved into sports betting through a few bits of M&A. So it's really this kind of a shift across the two continents. Things have gone in opposite directions, and so that's ultimately the core challenge. The markets that were traditionally the sure things are now becoming more difficult, whereas the new markets that were once almost a bit pie in the sky are now becoming this really potentially lucrative thing. Sorry, this is quite a long-winded answer, but just to kind of like sum that up, the biting point that we're in now that I think is important to note is while European revenue and profit is being eaten into by tighter regulation, whether that's stake limits, I think we'll discuss later. And while the US is opening up, it's still very much in the startup phase. So, it's costing more than it's bringing back in. So that's kind of the challenge at the moment. You've got this in the middle of this shift. You've got the lessening returns on one side and the not yet there returns on the other.
Plus, another thing that if I might cut in, there's another thing that we maybe haven't touched upon is crypto. It's the crypto part kind of counterbalancing this whole regulation, the infringement. And that's why I actually, and I'm not saying crypto is a bad element in here. I'm not saying that. It's an enabler. I could put it in a context. I'm not saying that, but it's kind of facilitating a bit that kind of a darker, unregulated business as well. And we see it growing. We see it growing a lot. And as well, the currency itself is growing. So people with crypto money need to take them somewhere. And a bit of spillover that probably happened on the casino side. So I just think that the message I think should be to the regulators: taxes are good. Everyone wants to be in the taxed environment, but if they start doing too much player restrictions, let's say creating that toxic environment for the player might work somewhere else where it must not be so healthy. And the whole counterfeit part, we see our games showing up in a context where they're not supposed to be, because it's not our games. It's just a counterfeit. Previously innovation's been driving everything. So doing cheap copies of something, that's not going to be the what's going to drive the market in the legit side anymore. But sadly, the bad over-regulated parts has kind of opened the door for the counterfeit market, which is really, really bad, because it's really hard to take the market back once it's been going down that route. I think that if you're looking at talking to streamers, that talk to players, and see where the new breed, the new the new brands that pop up, what are driving them, and how are they bringing, what is their go-to-market strategy, and I think you see that it's coming now, and so I find it very interesting to see how that's going to hit in the mix of everything, in Europe. So but the only thing you can say, it's never a dull moment in this industry. There's always something happen. There's always some curveballs coming that you got to be ready for. And I find that very, very interesting and challenging. I think that the lobbying today, and I think that is one of the issues why the regulations in these local markets are going in different directions and maybe not being best for the industry. Is that when I talk to some of the operators, ask them what they're doing this, and it's more like they're driving an agenda for the local market, which basically means that if we get this regulation into place, it will be worse for their competitor than for them. Which means that if you have that thing going on, everyone's going to try using regulations at a competitive advantage on their side. The only problem is that it has an impact on the entire local market where they're in. And so I think that there's the B2C guys should more stand hand in hand and dictate something together that would work, not dictate, but to try and lobby for that something to work for the entire market, and the things about the industry as a whole, and not just saying getting a competitive advantage over someone else because they know it's going to be worse for them than for us. And I see that, and it's not really helping the industry. It might help them for the quarter or for the 3 quarters, but it's not going to be good for the industry in the long run. I think that all these player restrictions just gonna be, the channelization is just gonna decrease, and that's just bad for the legitimate industry. And I'm just afraid that whatever is going to scoop up this part on the other side, it's going to be much, much darker. It's going to get darker and darker. We're talking about counterfeit B2C, counterfeit B2B streams, etc. It's just not good. Huh? So I really think that they would kind of get to the sense about just reading the data. I really hope so.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think this collaboration between the industry and regulators is key, and that also the regulator has an appetite, to get a lot of insight. What is the possible effects here, and what do we want to achieve, and then streamline and harmonize the frameworks so it's optimized with obviously responsible gaming top of mind. I mean, Robin, you mentioned Germany here with the €1 max bet, and we hear in the market that it could sort of drive the RTP down, and that is not good either, because if you have a low stake level and then you are taxed on turnover, which I think could happen and most likely will happen in Germany, then there is no margin. In order to get the margin, you are then lowering the sort of the RTP in order to get a little bit more out of it. But that is not helping the players, and when it's not helping the player side of things, that is when you start to look elsewhere, and when you look elsewhere, then you get the lower channelization into the regulated market, and then you are failing at the end. So I think we are talking about the balance here, and the balance is because there is this collaboration and a proactive dialogue between the industry and the regulator. That needs to happen all the time, not only inside the country, but also more wider, maybe European wide.
Can I step in with one thing? Just one thing there, because I want to hear Robin's as well view on this as well. I mean, what I see here a little bit from specifically drilled down from the Swedish market. This is home market in home place, home country in many ways. then you hear like that the public opinion still has an opinion around gaming, and I think they say a lot of it is because there's still a lot of TV commercial and in the broader media. There's still a lot of campaigning and activities from the B2C brands. And so they're saying like we start a regulation, in the public opinion it was like provide regulations so we don't need to get that much, in our face TV commercials or radios on a regular basis. But the restrictions was on the player, not on the marketing. So in the public opinion, they feel like the regulation hasn't helped anything. So I'm just wondering if that happening in all the other places as well. Because then it would be so easy to lower the pressure by, have advertising going on, after 10 o'clock or when kids gone to bed and so forth. And I think that will probably solve the P&L for some of the B2Cs as well, because they won't have to spend so much money on marketing. I don't know.
Fred, I'd like to come to you, if I may, and ask you about industry consolidation in the B2B sector. I'm not directly referring... Well, I am directly referring to Evolution and NetEnt and Red Tiger and Big Time Gaming. I wouldn't expect you to comment on that, but that kind of thing is going to keep happening. And I wonder, what does that mean for Yggdrasil, that kind of consolidation?
Well, I will tell you this. Consolidation has previously happened. It's not a new phenomenon here, right? It's happened before. It just goes a bit in phases, depending on where the industry are and how the industry players are at the moment. But when I take two steps back and I look at the phenomena around consolidation and new influx, because I see not only, don't want to look at only one area, I want to look at the influx as well. And as we mentioned in previous podcasts, I think we were one of the ones who made sure that there's a tidal wave of new studios coming in, a bit realizing we can take down the big 3 or 4 guys that was there. And now you see a different scenario where we're there. You can come in on our platform as a studio and a B2B guy, because we're now working with slots developers. We have 25 something studios working. We're curating that. We're doing 6-7 games per week now, right? So we are kind of enabling a new tidal wave of B2B coming in. So whatever consolidation is going on here is actually not going to have that big of an impact, the way I see it, because the creative force of the talent out there, it's not going to want to be consolidated. You can consolidate the business, but you cannot consolidate the people to that extent. The creative talent will want to create something again. Or create something that, for themselves or in a different context. And I think you've seen that before. You could say spin-offs in people. You saw people working for NetEnt that came on Quickspin and whatnot, and even YGG and so forth. So it's just a continuous cycle here. So consolidation is just one part energy going one direction. And enabling creative talent to do something new. It's just another end of this force. Consolidation, it could be a good thing. It could bring value for shareholders, seek for synergies, maybe be beneficial for you to enter in a certain market. They have a product, they have a technology. That consolidation is good. I think defensive consolidation is just trying to share costs solely. I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest. I'm much more pro in enabling new businesses. I'm more pro in doing that. So I don't see this consolidation we see now is just going to be putting a bigger lid on everything. I don't see that at all.
But I would like you to round up, please, in turn, and maybe look ahead to the next year or 2 or 5, or whatever's relevant for what you think is the biggest challenge facing the sector. Bjorn or Fred, one of you.
Yeah, Bjorn, you want to take that? I think I've exhausted everything I wanted to say
exhausted.
already.
I can.
So I think I'm going to say the same thing again.
I take it.
I think you'll have a lot of still things to come out. I see that. So now is the time, man. Now is the time.
Thank you for the trust and confidence you have in me, Fred. As always. Yeah, no, I'm thinking about a couple of things here. One is for sure more of a standardization on the tech and the regulatory side. We talked about the industry specifically, from a regulatory perspective, being fragmented. And what I see in front of me in the next coming years is more of a standardization, more of a harmonization, both on the regulatory framework side, but also on the tech side, that how we can enable our output in a more streamlined way. Considering that if we look at our particular industry, the market is still flooded by new releases every month. So I feel that going forward, we need to bring innovation in our industry forward. We need to take the next step on the innovation ladder. What does that mean? I mean, obviously, we're talking about addressing again the another types of potential segment for entertainment, and how will that work? How could that look like? And how do we serve that particular segment? I think that is going to be like super interesting. I'm also thinking about the 360 view, that in hindsight of a higher type of competition out there in the market, and to create that competitive edge, and also to keep control on your own destiny. I believe that we will see more of stakeholders taking this 360 view. Fred, you talked about the streamers. We have also affiliation. We have obviously, our customer segments and markets. But if we don't have the 360 view, if we don't understand the ecosystem in where we are sitting and living and breathing, we will not drive our business strategy agenda forward. So I think that is one part that we will see be more handled. And also what we have talked about throughout this particular podcast is also the globalization. And I believe also that US will have a big say in how this particular industry will be shaped in the next coming 3 to 5 years. The US is today already setting some of the evaluation parameters in the industry, and they see the industry more as amusement, than gambling. So US, I think, will also be an important driver for where this industry is going.
Bjorn, thank you. Also to Fred and Robin. I didn't get to talk too much in the last hour or so, which means we did something right. I look forward to catching up again and seeing how much you got right. No, I said you and not me. Thanks all. Have a great day. Take care.
All right. Thank you very much. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for participating.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ciao.